Hi there, Frank Thacker here, and welcome to the Daily Peacemaker. We've been looking at the relationship or the intermingling of evolving into the oneness as you evolve, and also the issue of nonviolence and how, as you move forward in one area, you seem to move forward in the other area. And we've been focusing more on the nonviolence perspective, and in particular, looking at the principles of Kingian nonviolence. There's six of them, and we're going to look at number five today, which is avoid internal violence of the spirit as well as external violence, physical violence. And um, so, what does that mean in internal violence? How does that happen? And probably a good way to look at it is with an example. So, say you're at a party, neighborhood party, say, and you get into a discussion with someone, and let's say the topic is gun violence. And you get into this topic, and you have this position, and the person you're talking with has sort of an opposite position. But and you start talking about it, and as the conversation progresses, you begin to realize you're getting really annoyed with this person, and you find yourself start thinking, man, this guy is really stupid. How can anybody be so stupid? I mean, does he ever read anything? All he does is listen to propaganda. It sounds like. This guy is really, really bad news. Real stupid. What a jerk. You even find yourself getting a little annoyed with him. You feel like you want to shake him and wake him up. And because you've been listening to these podcasts and you have a pretty good sense of nonviolence, you are able to say to yourself, well, if I keep doing this thing could escalate. We talked about the degrees of violence and how they can escalate quite quickly, actually. So, and also you begin to realize I gotta like slowly pull back here and maybe sort of slip away because if I don't, this thing could get out of hand. So you find a relatively smooth way, and maybe you do one of these. Well, I just saw a friend over there that I haven't seen in a while. So let's stop here and agree to disagree at this point, and maybe come back to it. So you leave, but you leave that conversation, and you are still aware of this like real anger and all these negative thoughts you have about this person. You're carrying those around, and you go and you meet another person, and you start talking, and you're like only half paying attention to what the other person is saying because you're still back there with this other person in the sense of the internal anger and thoughts you have about that person. That's the internal violence. That's what they mean to. That's one example of the internal violence, carrying around negative thoughts and feelings about someone that you've had a conversation with where you really disagreed with them, and you got walked away with a lot of anger, a lot of negative thoughts, and you're carrying that around. You're beating up on yourself. And sort of tied to that is just the violence we do to ourselves in the sense of um, we do something and we realize that that was not a very smart thing to do. And we take it and we start to say, wow, what a stupid jerk I am. You start to um, name call yourself, or you get angry at yourself. So you're beating up on yourself. And again, that's that internal violence. Even shifting back to that conversation that you were having with this person, and um, you might start to reflect on, oh man, why didn't I say this? Gee, that was so stupid, Frank. You could have been a lot smarter than that. Maybe you could have convinced this guy. So you really begin to beat up on yourself. So, um, in some ways, the internal violence that we do is much greater than the physical violence. Probably, I mean, not too many people get into real physical violent confrontations. Um, they might get into some verbal abuse where they start calling people names right to their face, and that could have happened with that first conversation where, if you hadn't listened to all these podcasts, you might have found yourself yelling at this person and saying, "You're so stupid," and then the whole thing about how violence can escalate. But in general, the internal violence we do, where we carry around a lot of negative thoughts and feelings about ourselves when we um, do something that's stupid. There's a profound difference between, excuse me, doing something and saying that was a real stupid thing to do, as opposed to saying, "Wow, you were a real stupid jerk." So there's a difference between focusing on the behavior as opposed to beating up on the person. And in this case, it would be you. And the same with that person, that we had that discussion with. There, if you go and you start talking to the neighbor and this guy's name comes up, or even later you're talking with your partner and you start to say what a jerk this guy is, and how can anybody be so stupid, and you're sort of beating up on that person, that's violent. You're doing violence to yourself in the sense of being violent. And also, I believe anyway, there's an energy that's sent out that make about this person that will in some ways affect them. So the point is to avoid this internal violence that we either carry around with us vis-a-vis another person, or how we beat up on ourselves. And so what do you do with that? Well, one of the things that I've found helpful is when you're caught in that cycle, say, of um, beating up on yourself, just stop and think, well, there's been some good things I've done, and I'm not a bad person. And so you sort of switch to a more positive framework. And this is interesting when you think about that person that you think is such a jerk. There are people that actually are probably, and almost, I would almost say actually, that think that this person is pretty smart and they really like him. So, you can begin to look at that person and at least allow yourself to believe that they probably have some good qualities. And you might even be able to find some, especially if it's a neighbor and you've had contact in the past. So this whole point of avoiding internal violence is really an important one. So let me suggest that during the next few days, you just look at your daily life and see how much internal violence you carry around. Yes, you're probably not going to have too many occasions of physical violence where you're getting in a real heated conversation or a real physical confrontation with someone. But look at the internal violence that you carry, where you beat up on yourself, or you have negative opinions about a certain person that you don't express, but you still carry them around. So keep that in mind. Avoid internal violence to the spirit, to your soul, to your psyche, as well as external violence. So we'll leave it there. And as always, good to be with you. And thanks for sharing your time with me. Peace.